Hey, what is going on, everybody? Happy Friday.
Hey.
You know what that means? It's another episode of MillenniYell with Billy and Mel. Here we are, guys. We're here. It's a little gloomy day, so this is a great
It is.
kind of chat for today. And what we're going to be talking about today is stress, right? We all deal with it. But before we get into that, right, get into all those good things, if you are jumping on the live with us, right, and we're on other platforms if you don't catch us live, but live here on Facebook, if you're catching us right now, make sure you comment who you are, where you're from. Me and Mel would love to give you guys a shout out. And also, we'd just like to interact with you too, right? Because definitely these are topics that are important to you, not just to millennials, right, but to everybody really, but especially us. But like I said, we'll get into all that here in a second. But Mel, what is going on? How has your week been? What is going on? How are you doing?
It's going. Talk about stress is a great topic. I just got off a call right before this podcast, like back to back stuff today. So it's good stress. We're going to talk about good stress. We're going to talk about bad stress. But yeah, it's a little gloomy today. I got my nice cozy sweater and trying to stay warm, but enjoying the fall. Yeah, good week. Stress. Talk about another stress. Many of you may have seen my money-free weekend last weekend that we tried to be, not spend a lot of money, which I had a great time. Ended me in with some stitches here, guys. So that stress wasn't very fun of sitting in the ER. For a couple hours on Sunday night. But other than that, not much else stress. So
yeah, I was gonna note. I noticed your sweater. Right, we're starting to get a little colder.
Yeah.
I'm growing the beard out because it's getting a little colder.
Yes.
I gotta keep the face warm, right? And so, but yeah, let's get right into it. Right, stress. And I think the best way to start off this is that no matter with stress, people think that it attacks certain people, right? Like only certain people deal with stress. Like if you have a lot of money, you don't deal with stress, right? Or if you're, even happy people deal with stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis. And it's
definitely.
And so there's some good things that we're going to talk about stress, but obviously let's get into some of the not so good things, right?
Right. Because some stressors too, as you're going to start this, are short term, are situational stress. I've been in a situationally stressed, or and then there's long term. There's so many different types of it too.
Yeah, and so I was, guys, while we were researching this topic, right, vigorously, because stress is such a big thing. I think it was October 10th was actually National Awareness for Mental Health, and so not only just everything mental health, but we really want to look at some of the triggers in mental health, right? So stress is definitely one of those. And so, I found an article, Mel, and I shared it with Mel. It was a really interesting article. It was like the top 4 things that millennials stress about, right? And so let's get into some of those. Like, so obviously we have talked about finance before, but what do you think are some things that millennials struggle with financially?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at my experiences, we've talked about this a couple times too, that obviously house, car, living inside your means versus living outside your means, keeping up with everybody else on social media, trying to, people who just the spending habits. I think, people definitely have spend a little too much, I guess. And then when it comes down to the actual necessities, that then you're struggling with the stress of, of what you're having. But I think that it's more about having somebody, even just like you, that can talk to somebody to have a financial plan. When you don't have a plan, I think that really stressed me out, not having a plan, and putting savings aside. And I mean, what do you think? Like, not, I think even let's say you don't have any money in your savings and you have medical bills or a car accident or something unexpected, that you need a couple $1,000s. That's huge stress when you don't have that. What do? You do you have to go ask for help? Do you have to use a credit card? What do you do?
Yeah, it's crazy when you think of people not actually having plans. And I think the last stat that I saw, that I think 60%, and this is all Americans, 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. So if you think about that, that's savings in general. Like that's in totality, that's checking, that's your emergency fund. So to go into what you were just saying with everything and people dealing with that, right, that stress, I think it's also long-term financial wellness, right? It's not just so much, you were talking about it before, we have the short-term stress, right, which is my car broke down. Like, what am I going to do to fix this, right? I don't have the money to do this. But I think also the long-term stress of not having a plan or not having a clear vision of where you're going to be, because eventually, it's funny because people think like, oh, I'll just work forever. And it's like, no, at one point or another, you're physically not going to be able to do it. Like, it's not. So eventually you're going to have to stop working. And I think our generation, and we've talked about this before, I think our generation is in a really weird kind of situation because not only, are we coming out of college, right? And we're getting entry-level jobs coming out of college, right? So you have these kids that are getting 4-year degrees and getting $30,000 or $40,000 a year, barely able to survive. And then you're asking them to save for retirement. So you kind of have a weird situation where they're not saving enough money. They're not home buyers. They're not having large families anymore because we as a generation just can't afford it with the cost of living and everything that's going on.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember at some point, after college and, my best friend looking for a house and like saying, I don't want to be house poor. I don't want to have all the expenses of this house and buying all this furniture and buying all these things and then not being able to do anything else, like the idea of being house poor. But another thing that you brought up, which is good because I've experienced this too, the stress, with financially stressed about not being able to do certain things that you want to do. Go out, have a drink, have a dinner, everybody else is going out and, it's not just like frivolous spending at the same time. It's like you want to enjoy the things with your friends and you want to do things, but sometimes there's stress that you can't, you can't do those things. And I think that weighs on people a lot when there's not that opportunity to have that extra spending money for the month and stuff, your budget.
Yeah. Oh, and then, just talking to, because I'm not a parent, but I have millennial friends who are parents, and the stress of, not being able to give their kids the Christmas presents that they want or the birthday presents that they want, or put them in, the sporting leagues that they want. Because you've seen some of these sporting leagues. They're like thousands of dollars to join these things, right?
And sure, like certain sports cost like hockey, like that's like an expensive sport.
Yeah.
For sure.
But like travel and all that other stuff that's associated with that, I know that is, an added stress on the families financially. And so, but I think a perfect segue from finances is work, right? Because we kind of hinted on it a little bit. And so, I think a lot of people, you're seeing for me anyways, from my aspect of things, I see a lot of people switching from what they did as a career, maybe now shifting. We've talked about this, shifting to the entrepreneurial way of doing things. And I think people are stressed out about, a lot of people feel like they're in a rut, right? You know what I mean? Like they're stuck at where they're at. And that can cause a lot of stress.
Yeah, and I think it ties in with what we talked about last podcast. We yelled about what money can and can't buy, and I think that work obviously has a huge factor in why people work so much and so hard for money, in a sense to provide and to save for things. But definitely I think the work stress, what we say, work your life away, working so hard and doing things now to save for retirement and what we want to do. And that's, your profession. We obviously want to encourage this, but for what? Like to then, can't experience things in your 30s and your 40s, and in your 50s, like to sit there and wait till you're retired to start traveling or start doing these things that you want, because you're just working through all those times. And I think that it's very stressful. I did it, in because of being a business owner and trying to just grind and do stuff. Like I lost opportunities with relationships and family and friends because I was working so much. And there was just a lot of stresses on that. It affects your relationships. You don't have to, you kind of put things before self-care, and definitely can turn into, we'll talk a little bit too about how it can affect your health and your, obviously the mental health, but physical health too. But, I think that there's so much behind, whether it's an entrepreneur or you're in a position at work where you're so stressed. I think we need to take a step back and say, is this worth the stress that I'm putting on myself, my body, my family, my kids? And there's people who don't see their kids because they work, their work is so demanding, or their spouse or their significant other, or they don't have time to work out and do the gym. Like I know that this goes back to making priorities and versus excuses, but there are some times that working, the demands of work can just cause so much stress that it starts to really affect so many aspects of your life.
Yeah. And, why you had brought up something and it kind of triggered a thought in my mind. And, yes, your job, the money that you're bringing in from your job can be, or the lack of money that you're bringing in from your job, or the amount of time that you're spending at your job and not with your family, can definitely cause stress. But I think another key aspect of that is job development or job growth, right? Because I think, especially in the generation that we grew up in, we had a lot of technology throughout our careers, and a lot of things were moving fast, right? And they're only getting faster. And so since we're, in that mindset, like most of Americans, right, where you expect things really quickly, and when you don't get that job promotion, right, or you don't move up the corporate ladder as quickly as you think you should, right? Because everybody thinks they're the best at what they do, right? I mean, just
I am.
Like I'm number one, right? And that's great. Like you should think that way, right? But like especially on the whole corporate aspect of things, right? I think that is a huge stress. Like, am I good enough now, right? And we talked about self-doubt. Now you begin to self-doubt yourself and stress out. Am I ever going to get that position? If what does it matter if I keep working really hard? I'm not going to get, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I think right now, I mean, there's we could do a whole podcast on just COVID stress in general. Like, let's be honest. We could probably have 5 episodes on COVID stress, because so much has happened with work. And I think that, it goes back to a lot of is, not just like, is it worth it, but can you work smarter and not harder? Can that stress, I think we've all been in situations where we say, is this worth the money, the time, and the stress that it's putting on myself and my family? There's always something out there. There's always something going to be out there. Like maybe it's a different field. Maybe it's different hours. Maybe it's, maybe there are pros and cons. There's definitely going to be differences in it. But if you could make changes with work that could alleviate some of the stress for yourself and your family, I mean, change your whole world. It could change your whole life and your world in a sense, making some of these changes if they're so stressful that I just keep going back to the life's too short to be stressing over, certain things. And I don't know, sometimes people don't feel like they have a choice or they don't know how, but I think, when you're in situations that can be so stressful, you need to talk about it. You need to just talk about some solutions of that. Like, definitely need to be out there. There's so many people that can give great ideas for you if you are in, situations like that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, it just another added stress beyond finances, right? Going right into work, can definitely add stress. And like you said, with the whole COVID thing, we could go hours into COVID stress, and now people's income has been cut in half, right? Because people have lost jobs.
Closing businesses,
Yeah. And even people, even businesses that are still open looking to hire people, like people aren't, even though people are out of jobs, the whole situation that people are making more money, in unemployment than they are in their regular jobs. So even trying to, as a business owner, that's super stressful, right? Trying to find people that are going to help you further your business, because we can't do it all on our own. But so, I think a big thing that we want to talk about is health, right? Stress and what it can do to your health. What are some of the things that, in your mind, that you think that people deal with on a health basis when they're dealing with stress?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through it. I think that there's, we've talked a little bit too with depression and anxiety. I think that it really can affect, mental health for sure. I think that some people, it all depends. Everyone reacts differently to stress, right? And there are people who don't have great coping mechanisms either. I mean, I think it's learned, and I think it's definitely things as a child when we our parents, help us to learn how to deal with stress. I definitely think that there's different coping mechanisms, but yeah, there's just the wanting to sleep, the depression side where you just you shut down, I think with stress, you could definitely shut down, withdrawal, just basically saying but also anger, more of the violent, anger, getting, just not being able to deal with it in a sense of yelling. I know that people get snippy. That's, for me, if I'm a little tense, I can tell that I'm tense because I'm a little snippy. I get a little, I have to just kind of check myself and take a step back and say, yeah, I'm stressed. Okay, let's take some deep breaths. Let's sit down. Let's get your mind off of it, obviously, because that's how, certain people react. I think that there's things, eating, people stress eat, too, or they don't eat when they're stressed. It all depends. I mean, there's so many different things that everyone goes through. But overall, it's an incredible, impact on your health and, sleeping, can't sleep. I saw something too, some people with stress, they grind their teeth at night. That's not good for your, that's just your teeth. So there's definitely a lot of things that, headaches, and I think that that's where managing stress and, like we said, learning to cope, or, obviously talking to people. But I think, just trying to not let it change your, your day, and kind of give you that take away from, the energy and the focus and the priorities of your day.
Yeah. I mean, all those are huge, health concerns. And listen, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but I know I read somewhere that, obviously stress, releases a chemical within your body that, damages you. It puts stress on your heart, right? We as Americans, we do enough to put put our heart through the ringer, whether it be diet, and other things and what you consume and, but, and just outside world stuff. But like stress can definitely put a significant damage on your heart, take years off of your life. It's
I've even seen too with like stomach issues, like digestive issues. There's like ulcer, obviously I think ulcers.
Yeah.
Stress can be from ulcers, but you had brought up something too, like what people might tend to lend to with stress, like alcohol, right? What else? Like drinking, stress reliever when you're having some wine and some beer, some of that stress goes away, right?
Yeah.
And then there's people that get into a habit of drinking to definitely get away from that stress, and drugs. And that's obviously the extreme. When we think of some of the really bad things for our health, but I think that getting into a better place that you can deal with the stress, like I keep saying, is even a counselor. Obviously having friends and having support. There's such a stigma on counseling and therapy these days that in our country, Europe, I feel like it's recommended that people go when they're just dating, let alone engaged. It's like not a requirement when you're engaged, but that's so helpful to be a stress reliever. We'll probably get to stress relievers. I'm jumping ahead, but but there's definitely so many things to avoid the bad effects that on your health, physically and mentally.
Yeah, and I think
one of the choose to do.
Yeah, I think one of the big things too, you kind of hinted on, when you're talking about some of the negative things that you can do to relieve stress. It's just like it's not just alcohol or chain smoking cigarettes. You see somebody that's really stressed out, they're smoking a lot of cigarettes, right? They're using that as a coping mechanism, right? And so there's so many other things that people use as coping mechanisms. Like, for instance, I think a lot of people just want to figure out a way how to escape reality.
Even just sleeping. Like for me, like when I've been super stressed and kind of get into situations that I've had in my life, like I was situationally stressed or I thought that I couldn't concentrate or I was depressed, and they're like, no, it's just stress. There's definitely there's a lot of similarities between it, but sometimes I just want to sleep. And I think that's the escape. It's like I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming about stuff. I'm not, I don't have to be in reality. It's like inception.
Well, the article and I'll post it in the comment section. It's from Business Insider, and it was this is the article that we're talking about, guys, that you can check out, but this is some of the information that we're getting. And they actually have a chart on here. They have all Americans, and then they have millennials with high money stress. So money being a stressful thing, just being one of the stressors, right? And then it has a list of stress management techniques that we would use, right? And so 58% of us report watching, to relieve stress, more than 4 hours of TV a night.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot of TV in one night, right? Like that's a really lot. 67% of us will just surf the internet aimlessly, like for no reason, like just
I've done it,
scrolling.
I've done it, and Facebook Marketplace.
46% of us millennials, right, report napping and sleeping as their stress reliever. Just like taking random naps throughout the day. 41% of that will eat, and then 25% drink alcohol. So I know that doesn't add up to 100%, but it's
no,
also.
But I was going to say, not that you missed it, but working out. So many people use working out as a stress reliever. And your Peloton there.
But that could either be good or bad, because like there's always, you can always overindulge, right? Like having a glass of wine, right? Having one glass of wine is fine, right? but like having a whole bottle is not
right. Like every day, like needing that at the end of the day to de-stress is not good. Like, I've been in situations where people who in stressful situations, they drink more, and you're like, it's a little, you can tell that's more than they consume on a regular basis. And I think that, maybe there's some other things that you can do to not keep doing that. But yeah, I definitely agree with the other ones for sure. I don't watch much TV at all. I would be the surfer on the internet because I'm always on the computer, and like the nap and stuff. But
yeah, I would say more so like Facebook and social media.
Yeah.
I mean, that is probably a huge, and we've talked about social media and comparison and stuff like that. Social media can definitely be a stressor, especially what we're going through right now with COVID, the election. I mean, if you have a different political view of somebody else, you're considered like the world's worst person, right? Like it's crazy. And even though like sometimes like I'm not a part of that, like I try not to like dive into those comment sections, right? But sometimes you're bored, you're stressed out, you're like,
and you're just creating more stress for yourself.
And so now I'm going through these people's comments, right? And you just see people just destroying each other, and you're like, "What? That person's an idiot. Why are they saying that?"
Right.
And you get stressed out, right?
You're just trying to distract yourself from your own stress by looking at other people. Like it's just to like get other type of stress so that you're not. It's like a distraction. But yeah, I mean, I forgot a great one that I've been doing. Bubble baths, relaxation, bubble baths I've been doing, and reading. And I think that, there's massages, obviously, again, some of this costs money. But I definitely think that when there's times about self-care and taking care of yourself, sometimes treating yourself to a massage or yoga. I mean, you can do free classes, meditation and yoga. I know a lot of people do that when they feel stressed. There's plenty of apps, free apps on there for things that you can do to de-stress through just even deep breathing. I mean, I think, and it doesn't even have to be long. Sometimes it's just a quick, okay, everything's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I don't know, I say like to kind of have to check your reality. I mean, it's hard. And I think that I went months and months and years just stressed all the time. And it's very hard. I don't want to say it's like a lifestyle, but I think that it's a lifestyle change, and it's a life change where you have to really say, like, how bad really is this? Is this like life threatening? Is this job threatening? Can this wait till tomorrow? Can I, weighing, and maybe this is just how I deal with stress a lot of times too, is weighing what's really so bad about this thing that happened. Is it something that that will be, is it a problem? Let's solve it. I look for a solution. And yeah, I think that's where I try to be cognitive about what it is, and that it's not that bad on the grand scheme of things. Some things are, but kind of weighing those things, I think, can really get you to just be like, okay, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, trying to take emotion out of it and trying to think of it from a more logical standpoint.
Oh, that's hard.
It's hard, but
No.
But I think one of the ways to kind of get into how we deal with stress and might help somebody that's watching this today or listening to this, right? But one of the things that I've been, there's a great book by Simon, Sinek or something like that. It's like, What is Your Why? And I think, especially this whole year, 2020, dealing with the stresses that we've dealt with, is understanding, for me, understanding my why. Because regardless if you're going after anything in your life, goals, dreams, whatever your aspirations might be, even if you're not, like even if you're just content with working your job, coming home, working for the weekend, if that what brings you happiness, that's fine, right? But know this, that no matter what you choose avenue in your life, you're going to deal with stress at some point in your life, right? It's just going to happen. And so, and obviously, like somebody like us that's going after things, opening businesses and stuff like that, you're going to stretch yourself. So you're going to expose yourself to more stress. Your why's got to be big, because you have to look back at that. Your why, once you know the why, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't, the how doesn't matter, right? What happened to me doesn't matter, because you know that whatever you're going after, whatever you're, if it's your family, if it's a better life for you, your family, your kids, whatever that might look like, you're going to be able to move past those walls, right? You'll be able to go around them, over them, through them, because your why is stronger than anything that the world can throw at you. Not to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the concept of what I was trying to explain, in a sense of like, how bad is this really? Is it really going to wreck my day, my week, my month, my year? But I think that I think that's that's what I was trying to say, I guess. But I think that we're always going to have stressors. Especially external stress. So what we didn't even talk about here. So there's internal stresses, external stresses. There's,
oh my God, yeah.
I mean, again, not a scientist. There's definitely, other different terms and how they affect us, and how we create them, who creates them, and outside, inside. But, I definitely think we're always going to have it, and tomorrow's not guaranteed, and, and jobs aren't guaranteed, and, for doing things for the wrong reasons and chasing money, like we talked about last week, anything could happen. I mean, look at a medical diagnosis. I mean, thinking of even just with my sister, and, her with the MS and it being declining. And then we find out this year that it was a brain tumor. I mean, it's something that our whole family, the stress then added on her, physically, mentally, emotionally, and then it took over our whole family. I mean, obviously, then that's relationships. I mean, I don't have kids, but that would have affected everybody. I mean, it really would have. And that's something that you hope and pray would never happen. And, you want great health and stuff, but stuff happens all the time. I mean, and then you add, you had relationships and marriage and buying houses and children, and look at this year, the stress that children even that are having to do the virtual schools at any age, I are so incredibly stressed themselves, like poor little kids who are just acting out and maybe not sure how to cope and deal with the stress of that change. And, there's always going to be that. I think it just goes back down to trying to do more of managing it. Finding out that's where what I've tried to do is how to cope with different stressors. But it's also like, when I said it too, like I get snippy, like I can tell sometimes when I get stressed, like your stomach gets, if you're rushing and you're late and you're like, oh my God, I'm stressed. You start to get like that fear of, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm late. And I think that recognizing your own body reactions, is the first sign of how you can deal with that, and then seeing other people's. So then like learning your own, but then being able to learn other people's, like, oh, okay, they're stressed. Like, oh yeah, they're definitely stressed. Like this is
Yeah.
And dealing and being able to help somebody else in that position, because for yourself, I think we always say you can't love somebody if you don't love yourself, or you can't be happy for somebody if you're not happy about yourself. I think there's the same thing with stress. You can definitely help other people with stress too, when you know how to deal with it, yourself.
Yeah. And, going back to, things that we do to, help with stress, you mentioned it before, and it's talking, right? It's talking to people. It might be talking to a counselor, right? It might be talking to a family member. It might be talking to a friend, right? Like somebody in your, in your field that, that you confide in. But I think another big thing, and that, I think it's about having a good support system, because it's tough. This world is tough, right? And it's super tough by yourself. And what I mean by, I'm not talking about you necessarily need to be in a relationship with somebody, but when you're isolated, right,
keeping and you don't everything up here.
Yeah, you keep everything up here. You're your own worst enemy, and you know that. I know that. Like the thoughts that run through your head. If somebody could play a, I'm generally a positive person, right? Like I'm very positive. I try to, to go out of my way to do that because it's not just for everybody else's consumption, but it's also like me speaking it out and then consuming it, right? But if you were to play a highlight reel, right, of all the thoughts I had this year, right, it would be a completely different story just because you can't control that first thing that comes in your head. Like you just can't. It's impossible. But you can control the second, third, fourth, fifth thing that you're thinking about, right? And that's what happens is when you don't talk about it, you begin to go down that rabbit hole, like, and you start to make things up, right? And you start to imagine things, and things start to grow. And then the situation, you're like, I know for me, for an example, I had a client situation. And in my head, I was like, man, they're going to be so upset. They're going to do all these things. They're going to scream at me. They're going to yell at me. Got on the phone with them, said, hey, we just need to do this. And they were just like, okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I used to have a cup that said, hold on, let me overthink this. Because that's a lot of, I mean, that I think that is involved with stress is, and again, why people say, like, let's sleep on it or think about, or like kind of, can we revisit this? Or there's ways that when you are in those stressful situations that you can try to like shut it down for a little bit so that your mind isn't wandering, because our minds wander for sure, and make up every scenario that it's probably not. Sometimes it is. But yeah, I mean, I think that goes along the lines of managing stress. And sometimes, unfortunately, people that with depression and anxiety, I mean, that's just why it's so much more difficult. I mean, there's situations of suicide, and that's why there's so much awareness right now with mental health, because people are alone, like you said. I mean, there's so many different reasons why, but really having some type of a support system and checking in. I just saw something on social media the other day, now like more than ever, check in on your friends that have, or right. And it was like examples, like maybe there was a breakup, or maybe there was a job loss, or maybe there was just depression or anxiety, or, anything. I mean, it was just like, check in on your friends who are in these situations, because they might not have anybody checking in on them, and that's huge, I think, for being able to just have that stress maybe relief just by talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, no, that is so important. Like here in Lidditz, where I live, there's a bench right by the VFW, and it says smile and say hello to everybody, because you don't know what somebody else is going through. And it might not even be necessarily your friends, right? It might just be nice to somebody. And that's why it's so important, I think, like that we really take a time to step back in this situation that we're in as a country. I'm not trying to get political here, but just saying, like, be careful what you say to people on social media. Like, you have no idea what that person's going through, right? And the comments that you say to somebody just because they believe in one political party or not, right, could set them over the edge. And especially, like you said, everything is amplified right now just because we're social distancing from each other, right, in a sense. But everything's amplified in that way, and so all people are doing is just consuming social media, and consuming media in general, because they can't do things like they once wanted. They can't go, like, for somebody that loves like travel, right? Like you said before, there are people out there that all they do all year is travel. Like when they they look forward to the little mini vacations that they are taking, big vacations that they're going to take that year. And now that those are, pretty much taken away from them, now they don't have that stress reliever, right? And now they're just kind of stewing, right, in their home.
Right.
And, so going back to just, I think it's, being nice to people, right? Even when people aren't nice to you, trying to be a relatively nice person.
Well, I think too, that could almost be a stress reliever, because I think that I look at a lot of times doing something for somebody else makes me feel better, like being able to give something, or, even if it's just a compliment, but even if it's like a little gift, or I like giving, sure, I love receiving, but again, no gifts, not my love language. Okay. But I think that kindness, that smile that you're giving is making you, it's like, you can't fake it. What are you gonna, obviously giving a smile, and a genuine smile, or a compliment, or holding the door for somebody, and then that person smiles at somebody else. It's like that whole, reaction, whatever it's called, domino reaction. But I think that's something that could be a stress reliever, is just trying to do something for somebody else, trying to do for others. It always is something that makes me feel better, that I'm able to give, and that could just be, I don't know, it wasn't on any of my thoughts or my lists here that I was thinking, but maybe that could be something that's a little stress reliever, is like, how bad is this? Somebody else is out there that's more stressed than me.
Yeah.
Got a roof, got food, got great support, got this, stressed about XYZ, but there's millions of people out there that are way more stressed, maybe putting it in perspective.
Yeah. I follow a lot of different, people on social media, and a lot of them obviously are, just from my mentality, are positive types of people. Not a lot of negative. And, one of the things that just reminded me of was, Gary Vee. He made this post way back and said, there's always somebody that has it worse off than you do. Like, if you were to rank people, like, there's 8 billion people in the world or something like that, something like 9 billion people, who knows, right? So sorry guys, if you're coming here for hardcore facts,
I don't know.
So
you should know this.
Let's just say there's 8 billion people.
This is why we need you guys to comment while you're listening. Yes, you guys can learn us.
Yes, I'm sure somebody will fact check me here. But let's just say there's 8 billion people, right? For argument's sake. Okay. And so if you were to rank people and their happiness, right, there's always going to be somebody at 1, and there's always going to be someone at 8 billion, right? And so, a lot of us are not at 8 billion, right? We're not some person that's, held against their will, that's not getting any food, that never has a future coming to them, right? We're not there. So we're up on the list. So being thankful for what you have, right? That's a great stress reliever, is gratitude, understanding, like, I have things in my life, like,
turning things into the positive.
Like I have a house, right? I have a family. I have a career that I enjoy.
You have 2 little baby puppies.
I got 2 puppies, right? I have a podcast, right? Like, things, right? And I think that's going back to comparison, not comparing yourself to what other people have, because there's always going to be somebody that has more than you. Newsflash. Like, there's always
a lot.
someone richer than you, someone that has,
looks better.
Better, has washboard abs, abs. There's always going to be somebody that has a nicer car than you. Like, that's just how it is. Like, so once, and
then you're going to be that to other people. Like, you have, things too. And I definitely think being grateful for stuff, and like we said, trying to spin it on the positive would definitely be something, because I think you get out of your own head and you kind of almost can, like, escape that, that stress, maybe, at least until you can find a solution for it. It's not like it's just going to go away so most of the time. I mean, it's still going to be there, or it could be an ongoing thing or occurring. But yeah, I mean, I think especially now with things that are going on, like you said, with COVID, and it's just made things, these pet peeves that we talked about when we did the podcast. So these are your pet peeves. Like, it's heightened. Everything is just so much heightened, and there's so much tension. And I do want to say, like, I've talked to so many people. It is not like, if there's somebody out there that is like, oh, I'm just really tense lately, or I'm on edge, or I have no patience. Like, oh no, it's everybody. Like, please, everyone that's listening and watching this, like, it is everybody. Even if you're the best managing stress, and I still think that there's people who are, for sure having that effect, having it affect you. But I did want to say too, before we go on, that we because we're streaming now, when we do the live on Facebook, we have it on all of our pages and stuff. And somebody that I'm friends with, Chris, Brennan wrote here, "Great job, Melissa, you rock." And I was like, "Oh, thanks for watching, Chris." Like, I gave you a thumbs up. And he's like, "This is great stuff. I wish it was around when I was a millennial." I'm like, "Wait, aren't you a millennial?" Like, all the time. If we're millennials, like, we're gonna be like 90-year-old millennials. You know what I mean? Like, I have to find out how old he is.
Yeah, I don't think you move out of a generation, but that's just, I'm not an expert.
I think this is a joke. Yeah, I think he means that his age, that he would be able to listen and learn all these things so that's great encouragement, Chris. Thank you for.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Now we are less stressed about this podcast now, right?
Right.
But no, the last thing I think I want to leave with before we kind of get into the millennial meme is that a lot of people try to think of, how do I eliminate stress out of my life, right? How do I eliminate it? How do I get rid of it? And like we've said before, it's not something you eliminate. It's ingrained in us. From early on in our lives, but early on in human life, right? There's always been stress. We stress out about money now, but back when we were cavemen, we were stressed out about not getting eaten, right? And so there'll always be
the lions.
Yeah, it's just our body's natural way of defending ourselves, because we, if there's a danger, you have to be. Stress heightens your sensibility, right? And so what you need to understand is how to manage stress, right? Like managing, like, you're never going to stop hurricanes or tornadoes, right? You can only hope to minimize the damage that those things cause by putting things in place, right? So understanding that you're not going to eliminate it. It's not going to happen. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
It's an event today, then it's going to be something in a couple months or next year, or, we're always a change. There's so many different life events that happen. Sure. It'll constantly be something new in a sense, you could, so definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's that time.
Millennial meme.
Millennial.
I really need to get a jingle for this.
I know. There's Fiverr can probably help us out here, right?
I'm gonna do this.
But it was my turn, right? Because you did last week, and so I think this is a pretty good one. So let's pop it up here. So it says, "Me trying to excel at my career, maintain a social life, drink enough water, exercise, text everyone back, stay sane, survive, and be happy." And it's
Cruella de Vil.
Looking all crazy on the wheel with her eyes bloodshot, very stressed out. So.
It is true. Yeah, I think just, we didn't even talk about the idea of just that work-life balance, which we now say is, I like the flow, work-life flow. Yeah. We didn't even talk about the stresses of trying to. No, we have talked about this on multiple podcasts about trying to be everything to everybody and trying to perform and please everybody and get all these things done. And I think that would be, again, I love when we get into topics that we could say, we could do a whole nother podcast on this, because it just means that there's, I think we're on the right track, and we're having a good time. But I think that it's also about, that's a situation with stress. Learning to say no, learning to take things off your plate. I mean, that's a whole thing. That book that I'm reading, the book that I'm reading, that, Present Over Perfect, it is about taking things off your plate. We put so much stress on ourselves. We choose this. I take on so much sometimes. I've learned to not, because you have to really weigh things. And there was a great example in this book about removing the chairs. We put the chairs out. Okay. We put the chairs out in the room, and we fill the room with the chairs. Like, it was an example in this one chapter was removing the chairs, less people, less opportunities, less things, and we'll have to just highlight that another time of being able to not take on so much, because that for me has been a huge stressor, but way stress relief when I just, no thanks, can't do it, or, that's one thing.
So speaking of books really quick, I don't think it has very much to do with stress, but I wanted to show you my next book because I finished my book for this month already.
Right.
So you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this title.
Oh God, Surrounded by Idiots. What do we say here? The 4 types of human behavior and how to effectively communicate with each in business and in life. I love that because actually, again, another topic. We jokingly talk about love languages and personalities. Personality tests. I don't know if I sent you that link. I'll definitely do it here today because we're talking about it. Different personalities deal with stress differently. Different love languages deal with stress differently. Understanding these 2 things can really help. It's getting through the surface of people and relationships and being able to really understand them and their stresses.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be a great topic for next week, personality tests, because that's
okay.
Millennials do a lot is personality tests.
Okay, so the color code, I'm going to
talked about this. I remember this. This was at
okay, so I'm glad. See, my personality of squirrel, that's me, and we'll talk about my color code. But that I need rein it in and give me a deadline here, and I'm putting up. I will put the link up right now. There's a free test. Don't do the full analysis unless you want to pay $39.95. But that'll be great for next week.
Yes.
Do it.
So I'll take it.
Yeah.
You've already taken it. So we'll post it, and we'll
have
all our wonderful viewers take it.
Yes. Okay. Everyone has to take it.
Maybe if you when you make that post, right, you can put. We're talking about our next show while we're still live, guys. So don't. Sorry, we're workshopping this. But
this is what we do, millennials.
But what you could do is post the link, right? Say, hey, go take this wonderful exam. Post what your color is, right, or whatever your results are, and we'll pick a winner for something we're going to give away.
Yep. That sounds great.
Our next giveaway, guys. I just announced it.
I love it. Okay, I'm posting the link right now, guys. So go on Facebook page, and if you're listening on a different platform or stream, definitely go onto our Facebook page, and I will post it now. And we definitely and post your stuff, or get on next Friday and surprise us because because it's really interesting. I mean, I was spot on with mine, and I did it with the leadership Harris, where you might have seen it in some of the stories that I posted, but it's huge with relationships, work, leadership, knowing yours and other people, being able to interact with people based on their personality. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, just putting it's empathy, right? Understanding how other people's minds work instead of just thinking that you're always right? Like you have to understand how other people's minds work in order to not only be in a relationship, but work with other people, work with your clients. All those. I mean, there's just a ton that we can go into. So I'm super excited about that. But before we jump on here, right, it's the other moment, right? Mel's moment. So Mel, leave us with a word of advice, something that we can take into the weekend that will make our weekend super awesome.
Do you think we need a jingle for that too?
I think we do.
Mel's moment. I think we talked about this one time. like a dee, like some type of
like the NBC, like NBC, like that.
The millennial meme is like aggressive, like millennial meme, and then well, don't go so fast that you need to get stitches this weekend, guys. No, I'm excited. We may be having a little date. Megan and you and I might be getting together this weekend. That'll be fun. Definitely have some family things. I have something that I might be doing with my parents and their friends. So spending time adopting your Mel's moment of family and friends. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how the weather's going to be. I just think that, trying to do things that aren't obviously stressful, that we can, I have been doing pretty well over the weekends with, like I said, taking a bath, reading some books. So why don't we do a good combination of stress-free and fun? I think that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I will not be totally stress-free this weekend just because I'll be watching Alabama football on Saturday, and that's always so I will have a little bit of stress in my weekend.
Yes.
But no, that was awesome. Great show today. Lots of great information. And like Mel said, guys, you know what I'm always going to tell you about the weekend. Just make sure, take some time to make some memories, to take time for yourself. That's a good thing to do with relieving some stress, right? Take some time for yourself. Mm-hmm. Self-care, right? Repair and get ready for the next week that's coming around the corner. So, but we do appreciate everybody that jumped on, and make sure that if you got some value out of today, share this, like this, tag somebody in this, go check out one of the other platforms that we're on. But we really do appreciate it, guys. And we hope that you enjoy your weekend, and we'll be talking to you real soon.
Bye.